Hey everyone, I am Literary Freak 11, and today I'm going to be talking about what I read in May, my wrap up. So I'm going to do the audiobooks first, and the first book that I finished was Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody, and I really liked this book. I liked the intriguing card game. I wish you kind of understood the rules better, but maybe I just missed that because of the audiobook and because I was, doing other things while I listened, so that could be part of it. Basically, this book is about this girl whose mom disappears and she has to go to the city of Sin in order to find her, and she gets caught in all of this politics, and I don't think you should really know any more of that going in, but I just love that. The next book that I actually finished on audiobook was Memoirs of a Polar Bear, and I had very mixed feelings about this because the beginning is about the grandma polar bear's writing. Like, it's about her progress and her process of writing her autobiography. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that it was a good aspect, but then when you get to the next one, you're like waiting to hear more about Tosca when you're really hearing about this woman Barbara that Tosca works with at the circus. And Tosca actually abandoned her kid, and you never find out why, but you hear a lot of stuff about the kid. And that kid, the son, like, also they talk about him being a really good environmental leader and all this stuff that he achieves in his life, but you never see any of it because it's about his first, like, year and a half of being alive, and so it's literally just him, like, opening his eyes, being a baby, and, the two zookeepers who basically raised him, which is kind of weird, and I like the idea that animals who can interact with society are minorities, but also, like, the rules are unclear because it's very clear that the grandmother can write and talk to people, and the mom seems not to be able to, except for this one person at the circus who she actually writes about, because they communicate in their dreams, and then the son seems to be able to communicate decently well, and I just didn't like that. I thought it was so artistic to the point where it kind of lost itself. So I gave it 2.5 stars, maybe 3. The last audiobook that I finished was The Thousandth Floor, and this is about a society in New York where they have this tower that's 1,000 stories and, miles high, and your social status determines what floors you live in the tower, and it reads like a soap opera. Like, it reads like Gossip Girl, like some type of drama like that. And I actually really enjoyed it till the end, when it went like sometimes some of the things that the characters were doing were a little crazy, a little weird. Took a nosedive straight off the crazy cliff, and I will not continue with the series. But I loved it right up until that point. Like, I loved it right up until the end, where it went from, like, intensity of, like, 4 or 5 to, like, 10. I was not a fan of that turn. But I really love all the characters and all their different interactions and how these people meet. And overall, I think I gave it a 4 stars. Now, for the real books, the first one that I finished was White Knight, which is the 9th in the Dresden Files series. And I will hopefully be picking up 10 this month. And I don't know, I just really liked it, but it did bring back a lot of characters that I kind of forgot existed, and so, because I've been reading these books over the course of a year, it's been a while, and so I've forgotten certain people and certain things that come back in this book, but I do like that he brings it all the way around, and there are a lot of different people interacting in different ways, and you learn more about the characters that are already there. The next book that I read was Long Way Down. This book is written in verse about a boy whose brother has just been shot, and so he's going to take the gun and kill the guy that he thinks did it. Every floor, someone else personally who's died at the hands of gang violence, at the hands of shooting on the street. And so I really, really love this book, and there's just this one line, it's something like, his blood pooled on the pavement amongst the galaxy of bubblegum stars, and like, it's beautiful. Most of the book isn't like that, though. Most of the book is written, in Ebonics, which is obviously how this guy talks, and it was just very true to the character. Next book that I finished was When Will Jesus Bring the Pork Chops? And I talked about this, reading this back in April, and I finally finished it in the beginning of the month. And it's funny because I was worried that, based on the title, that he'd do a lot of religion bashing, and he did some of that, but it wasn't too much. I didn't find this funny. If you're going to read a book of George Carlin comedy, pick up Brain Droppings. It's so much more out there funny. Like, for this, I just found myself nodding in agreement with a lot of things. Like, they were so true that, in fact, they were not funny. It was just like, okay, you're just stating things. But, he grumbles things. He has a very dark sense of humor. He's like, I don't like when people do blah, 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 and we should hit them with cars, or something like that. So if you're not into that type of dark, maybe a little bit violent, cynical humor, you're definitely not going to be into this. He clearly got crotchety as he got older, because Brain Droppings is almost a decade before this, I think, and it really shows. The next book, I really devoured this book in like 5 days or something like that, The Wicked Saints, and this book is about this war that's been going on for a century between two countries. One uses blood magic, and the other uses these saints that they can talk to, and and basically the people who use blood magic are bypassing these gods. There are a bunch of them, maybe 20, and they each kind of have different powers and grant different powers, but they can also be in the mood to give you use of their powers, and they can also not be. The other countries created a barrier and blocked these gods and used blood magic, so they do cut themselves open in order to use magic, but it's not. And then they have these spell books where they have written spells. One of the characters is a saint. The other is this vulture, which is a kind of group of people who've just gone too far with blood magic, and they are really interesting. I actually really, really liked the end of this. I loved the whole romance. I don't know, I really enjoy when romance doesn't work out, and I gave this book a 4 stars. It definitely was lacking in certain areas, but overall I thought it was very, very engaging, and I just needed to know what was next. The next book that I read was Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee, and I love this book. I gave this book 5 stars. It was beautiful, and it was fabulous, and this book is about these 2 girls who run this show on public access television called Midnight Matinee, and the thing about this show is they dress up as vampires, and they watch horror movies, and they do skits based on those horror movies. And so it's also about their friendship. Josie, who plays Rain, meets this guy, and then he kind of gets swept into their lives. And so what they want to do is they want to go to Florida to meet this guy who was a big horror show producer and see if they could get their show more public. And the other subplot is Delilah's father, who abandoned the family 10 years ago. And so these subplots kind of carry throughout, but it's just so much, like, I related so much to Josie, whose parents, want her to take this internship with the Food Network, because she actually does want to do TV professionally, and, with her parents kind of being like, well, we know what's best for you, and her being like, do you though? And so this book is very laugh out loud funny. Then it hits a point, and the whole end of the book is just hardcore serious. Like, very, like, drop dead, lose all of the humor, nothing funny whatsoever about it, and I really kind of wish that he would have used more of his really good humor writing to make light of some of the dark situations that happen, because it seems like if you would be running a TV show and that kind of allows you to laugh at yourself, then you would also be able to kind of create these characters who laugh and make dark jokes and things like that, but I also understand the point of not wanting to make light. The next book I read was Tropic of Serpents, and this book is the second in the Lady Trent memoirs, and the first one is A Natural History of Dragons. And this book wasn't as good, and I feel like it faltered on the natural history, and a lot of people said that in Goodreads too. It has so many opportunities to even put like a snippet where someone would ask them about their work, or someone would say this, that, or the other thing, or literally just to inject one thing, or like she's sitting there, they shot a dragon, and she's sitting there flexing the toes to try and figure out how they move to determine how the dragon runs, and no conclusion is ever put there. It's like literally a sentence is all you need. And so I feel like the science and magic, which is the thing that kind of drew me in with the first book, kind of failed miserably on the second. But the thing that's really interesting that drives the book is the culture, and there were definitely parts of it that were really slow. But in order to study swamp worms, they have to go into Maluine, which is basically called the Green Hell, and everything in it wants to kill you. And so these people have adapted to living there, and so the only way for them to, these explorers, to survive is to go into this swamp. And one of the things that they have is this concept of true minimalism, because they have to move camps a lot depending on when the waters flood, because it is a swamp, stuff like that. They can only take as much as they can carry, and they have a concept of kind of sharing everything. And so if you have more than you can carry, you're considered kind of greedy, and they have all of these cultural practices that make so much sense in context, and I love that. And the last book that I read in the month of May was The Devouring Grey. I technically still haven't finished this. Actually, I haven't read the epilogue yet because I was reading it on my way to the library to return it. Outside of the library, I took pictures of the epilogue, which I hadn't read yet, and then I never got around to reading it, but I still count it because it's probably not that important. This book was so delicious. Like, it wasn't that great of a book in terms of quality, but it was so intriguing. Every single time that you have questions answered, you get more questions that come up. Basically, it's about these 4 families in Four Paths, New York, and they each have a different set of powers, and they get these, and they are using these powers to track this monster, and it's so good at like these family relationships and the drama that ensues. Short, good read, very enthralling all the way through to the end. I only read 10 books this month, but if you would like to know more about the things that I've been reading, definitely like and subscribe, and you can follow my social media linked in the description below. Thanks for watching.